There are definitely exercises that are more optimal than others. These exercises won't magically transform your physique overnight, but they can give you those extra 3% of extra gains, which will make your physique stand out from the crowd. In this video, I will walk you through 9 factors that make an exercise perfect for maximizing muscle growth, so you can decide for yourself if the exercises in your current program are good enough, or if you should change that exercise out for another better option. First factor is the stimulus to fatigue ratio. The stimulus to fatigue ratio is getting the most stimulus and muscle disruption from an exercise with the least muscular and systemic fatigue accumulation possible. An exercise example with a horrible stimulus to fatigue ratio would be the conventional deadlift for the posterior chain. The conventional deadlift gives you a huge amount of systemic fatigue, as you can lift lots of weight with that exercise, but that weight isn't isolated on a specific muscle, but it is more spread out across the whole body. Why is the stimulus to fatigue ratio important? The overall systemic fatigue that you get from a deadlift bleeds into your recovery pool and your ability to progress in other movements, but not just within a single session, but across several weeks and months of your overall training program. For example, if you conventional deadlift 2 times per week like a fucking maniac, but want to maximize muscle growth in other areas of the body, like for example your chest, your deadlift sessions will impede your ability to recover and to progress on the lifts that are meant to grow your chest, even though that muscle and those lifts have nothing to do with the deadlift itself. Again, it is because of the wacky stimulus fatigue ratio that the conventional deadlift has and the toll that it takes on your whole body and system. It will also force you to take more deloads more frequently, as your body just gets fucking beat down very quickly if you use those shitty stimulus fatigue ratio type of exercises, which accumulates into several weeks and months of lost training, which you could have used to grow other muscle groups instead of just yanking big ass weights on the conventional deadlift. If you want to build a posterior chain, maximize muscle growth in that specific area, and reduce the fatigue that comes with the conventional deadlift, a better option would be a stiff leg deadlift or RDL. And I just now gave an example of the conventional deadlift. Imagine doing several lifts like that, like the low bar squat and the competition style bench press, where you can load fuck tons of weight without actually stimulating the muscle effectively and precisely. There is a spectrum to the stimulus to fatigue ratio. Just do the heavy compounds, bro, isn't always the best for maximizing muscle growth. Going to the other extreme end, just doing isolation movements and just feeling the muscle, bro, isn't the best option either. So you should find an exercise that you can go heavy as fuck in, isolating that muscle and putting as much mechanical tension and weight onto that muscle as possible, but also take away other factors that can limit your ability to maximize your muscle growth. The second factor is range of motion, strength, and resistance curves. So you should pick exercises that allow you to use as much range of motion, get as deep of a stretch, and fully contract a muscle as possible. Please avoid exercises that cut your range of motion short, especially if it's in the stretch position, as the stretch is the most beneficial and hypertrophic part of a movement when it comes to maximizing hypertrophy and strength gains. Using exercises that maximize your range of motion is common knowledge, but you should also hone in on focusing on stretch-biased movements. As I mentioned, the stretch position is the most hypertrophic part of a movement, so you should definitely focus on picking exercises which are the hardest in the stretch position. For the biceps, Bayesian incline curl, dumbbell or machine preacher curl, where you have tons of tension in the stretch position, is, when looking in isolation, far superior than a standard dumbbell or barbell curl. But that doesn't mean that exercises which focus on the mid and short end position are bad or useless, or that you should completely ignore them. Everything is context dependent, and you should firstly look at the program as a whole before you decide if an exercise is bad or good for your specific situation. For example, if you would do 2 exercises for your chest, if you want to do a chest press machine, which is most often the hardest at the top when the muscle is fully contracted, it would be advised that you do that exercise as the first exercise, as your ability to fully contract a given muscle declines the deeper you get into a workout. And after that, you could follow up with a barbell bench press, dumbbell bench press, or a simple dip, which is more focus on the stretch position. If you would reverse that order and do the chest press later in the workout, your ability to progress on that lift and get stronger over time, which is one of the most important factors for muscle growth,
everybody want to be a bodybuilder, so nobody will lift this heavy ass weight.
Would decline by a lot and almost be impossible. But if you reverse the order and do the weighted stretch focus lift after the contracted biased lift, your ability to progress on the stretch biased lift, even though your muscle is already fatigued, would be much easier than in the reverse order. The third factor for the perfect exercise is stability and safety for intensity. So you all know the effective reps model, which states that the last 5 reps of a given set are the most stimulating reps. And the closer you get to that absolute failure point, 0 reps in reserve or RP10, the more of a growth stimulus you get from a given set. Of course, you don't have to go to absolute muscular failure. You can still leave 1 to 2 reps in reserve. So when you're creating a program and picking an exercise, you should consider that training very close to failure or to muscular failure is king for hypertrophy. You don't ever want to fail your last rep because of nitpicky technique demands or stability factors. You want your actual local muscle to fail when you go to failure. Let's compare the classic barbell bench press with the Smith machine bench press. So when doing a barbell bench press, when you're trying to hit muscular failure, you actually fail because you slightly misgrooved the rep, or because you didn't have the most proficient and perfect bar path, or you don't even go to actual muscular failure, even though you think you are, because you don't have a spotter near you and it is too dangerous. You would get much more muscle growth and hypertrophy out of an exercise like the Smith machine bench press, where you can just dummy press the weights to failure without any technique or stabilizing demands. And even if you don't have a spotter, you can safely rack the Smith machine bar, even mid-rep if you failed the last rep. This also gives you psychological safety. You know that you can push your set to absolute muscular failure without risking your life on the process. You need to realize that most free weight exercises, which are highly technical, like the barbell bench press or the squat, are not mandatory exercises for muscular hypertrophy, but are more so of a skill. There are several tools to your disposal if you want to build muscle. Barbells and free weights in general are just one part of the equation. Stability isn't only important for safety and intensity, but also to maximize force production. With pure hypertrophy as your goal, you need to pick exercise which create as much external stability as possible. You want to move as much weight as possible with as much stability as possible, creating as much mechanical tension on the target muscle without any stabilizing going on, without any balancing or shit like that. We all know the memified TikTok exercise, the iliac pull down. It isn't actually as bad of exercise as you think it is. Sadly, it's just executed or portrayed in the wrong way. So the biggest shortcoming of the iliac pull down is not that it isn't a big heavy compound like a pull-up, but that it is unstable as fuck and that you cannot progress on it long term. If you're just kneeling on the floor or sitting on the floor without any other external support, you cannot purely focus on just your lats, as you have to stabilize your body in space. And if you're actually a strong individual, you will know that you will be flying across the whole fucking room if you tried this exercise. So to create external stability, to maximize force production, and therefore muscle growth, you can literally do the same exercise but use a bench support. With the bench at your disposal, you can brace with your feet against the floor and with your hands or your arms against the bench itself, which would act like a thigh brace in the lat pull down, keeping you in place, keeping you locked in, creating as much external stability as possible. And if you're lucky and have a good machine at your disposal, like a hammer strength lat pull down, use the principle of the iliac pull down, but use it in a smarter and better way. Your exercises need to be stable enough, the more the better, but more stability isn't always far superior than less stability. For example, a machine is better than a barbell on paper, but that doesn't mean that a barbell is fucking whack. A barbell is still more stable than bodyweight training, dumbbells or cables. If you stick to exercise like the barbell bench press or a barbell squat, it may not be perfect like a Smith machine or a machine version of it, but if you dedicate yourself to it and stick to it long term, the stability and nitpicky technique demands will become second nature to you. You won't have to think about your technique at all. The free weight will move like a Smith machine, and you can still just dummy press the weight. But it takes a long fucking time and lots of dedication to master a free weight movement. Factor number 5, practicality. As I said, stability is very fucking important for picking the right exercises to maximize your muscle growth potential. But what if you don't want to set up a fucking bench to a crowded cable station to do more optimal cable flies or tricep pushdowns? Or what if you have an exercise that you absolutely love and that is fucking perfect, but you can literally never get your hands on it and fucking do the exercise like a Smith machine jam press? Then that on paper perfect exercise is bad for you. Weekly, monthly and yearly trackable progress is king for hypertrophy. You don't want to change your setup all the fucking time, doing the cable fly with a bench and without the bench the other week, or not having the patience to wait for an exercise and therefore skipping it or changing the order you do that exercise. That will make your ability to track your actual progress much harder and therefore limit your ability to progressively overload your exercises, which is no bueno. So the 6th indicator or factor for a good exercise is the pump and soreness. If you feel an exercise fucking torching the target muscle you're trying to hit while you're performing the exercise and after you've done that set, if you get a huge fucking pump in the target muscle after just a few sets, or if you get soreness in that local muscle after the workout, it is a good fucking indicator. Of course, you cannot always know if the soreness comes from that specific exercise, but if you stick to the same program and you introduce a new exercise and it gets you fucking sore every single time, even after weeks or months, you know that exercise is fucking good for you. And now I'll tell you a little story. So on paper, the converging chest press machines are far superior to a barbell bench press. But when I introduced those chest press machines for the past month, I didn't have any pump and any soreness in my target muscle. But before that, I did normal standard bench presses with the barbell, and I had a huge fucking pump after just one set of 5 to 8 reps, even though that rep range or that specific exercise isn't even designed to give you a huge fucking pump. Of course, to find the best exercise for you, you need to experiment. When it comes to the soreness as being an indicator for exercise being good for you, I introduced heavy hip hinges back into my program, stiff lat deadlifts, even though it's a full posterior chain exercise, and also it's other muscles like the glutes and the hamstrings. Even though people say that hip hinges don't build the upper back, every time I finish that session, the day after, my upper back is fucking sore as fuck. So it is only logical that it is building my upper back. But don't take this wrong. I don't want you to focus on fluff and pump shit, but if you get a crazy pump in a specific muscle you're trying to train, whether it's a barbell bench press, a stiff leg deadlift, with heavy ass weights and low reps, you just know you will build fucking tons of muscle from that exercise. The seventh factor is fatigue. First, I will talk about joint and connective tissue discomfort. If an exercise is fucking perfect on paper, but it just doesn't fit your body well, you always get joint and connective tissue pain from it. That exercise, even if perfect, won't benefit you in that specific time period. That doesn't mean that you should abandon an exercise if it hurts once completely. You can always work yourself towards getting the necessary range of motion and mobility requirements to perform it.
I've known guys with shoulder injuries and rotator cuff strains that can still do weighted dips with a sling. They can't do it free weights, but with a sling, they could.
But even if you do that and your body and your joints still don't connect with that exercise, it hurts like hell. Even if you lower the weights, do higher reps, and really control the negative and do a slow tempo, just throw out the exercise and look for another. There isn't only bodily fatigue like joint and connective tissue discomfort, as I said, but also psychological and emotional fatigue. If you're always so fucking nervous before you're performing a specific exercise because you're so emotionally attached to it that your whole week is ruined, if you fail a rep, if you don't progress on it or even regress, then it's time to let go of that exercise and come back to it when you let go of that attachment, as you fumbling under that nervousness will hinder your progress on that exercise in the long term. This is the case for most people on basic exercises, for example a bench press, as there exists lots of social validation if you hit a 2-plate bench press for reps. You therefore are so fucking nervous to progress that lift, even if it causes you actual muscle hypertrophy because you're starting to yank the weight and GT form just to conform to that social pressure, which takes away from your hypertrophy gains. Now let's go to the other spectrum. You are not fumbling under the pressure, but you are exerting yourself psychologically too much. If you have to take 3 grams of pre-workout and read your ex breakup messages before you do a set of programming split squats, then maybe it's a good idea to switch that exercise out for a different exercise which is in the same movement pattern. For example, a lunge or a single leg press or stuff like that, which doesn't put you into the same crazy mental space. Why should you consider this? Stupid factors like these that don't actually have to do anything with your actual muscular performance fatigues your system unnecessarily without actually adding anything to your hypertrophy gains. If you listen to the craziest heavy metal songs for the whole fucking workout, even if it's a little calf raise, which I do sometimes, you'll notice that you will be much more fatigued systemically than if you only preserve those crazy songs and psychological hyping up for your main core and hard as fuck lifts. Both of these symptoms don't mean that you should just bitch out and train like a pussy. You should feel a bit nervous and care about your lift progression, but you will know when an exercise is not good for you in an emotional and mental capacity thing. You know what I mean. The most important indicator of an exercise that is perfect for muscle hypertrophy is loadability and progressibility. Long-term progression, beating the logbook from week to week, getting strong as fuck on your lifts is king for hypertrophy. That doesn't mean that you should do powerlifting style training for hypertrophy because you can load as much weight onto this exercise as possible. You should get strong as fuck on lifts that have the mentioned attributes or indicators of a good exercise and which have the greatest capacity for progression. This might look different from person to person, whether you're using machines, dumbbells, cables, barbells, body weight. As long as you get strong as fuck on your exercises, you will get big. Every time you increase the lift by a good margin over several months and years, that progression will show in your physique. Someone who goes from a 60 kilo bench press to a 120 kilo bench press will have a much bigger chest than before. Someone who goes from an 80 kilo hack squat to a 140 kilo hack squat will have much bigger quads. Someone who goes from a 10 kilo to a 20 kilo dumbbell preacher curl will have much bigger biceps. So when you choose an exercise for your program, does it allow you to progressively get strong as fuck on it? If so, it is a good fucking exercise no matter what the medium is. Now that you know that progressive overload is still king for hypertrophy, no matter what exercise equipment you use, at the end of the day, just do what the fuck you love. There are no wrong answers when it comes to picking an exercise. If you're not doing a fucking posable squat in your program, your exercises are somewhat stable, you get a stretch and a full range of motion, you can load that shit up heavily over a long period of time and get strong as fuck on it, that exercise is good enough for you. If an exercise is perfect and optimal on paper, but it feels fucking whack for you, it is not good. Also, why should you do what is perfect on paper, but what you don't actually enjoy? Doing something because you love it, at the end of the day, in whatever endeavor, when it comes to life itself, will give you the best results. The exercise needs to be psychologically intriguing to you. If you fucking dread that workout because you have that one specific exercise and you just cannot get yourself to get fucking hyped up to do it, you don't feel that fire before the exercise while performing it, and after the exercise is done, you're not looking forward to perform it the next week and the next week and the next week.
When you came up from a squat and you drove it and completed the rep, go deep through your core. It was like music. Every rep, you wanted to hear that sound again, and you wanted to complete that rep with as much force as you possibly could that would break fucking steel, man. That feeling like you had to fucking do it!
Then it is not a good exercise for you. Everyone is different. Please know yourself and do what you enjoy. Maybe you like going to absolute fucking muscular failure on machines and more stable exercises. You just want to know that you put as much stimulus on the target muscle as you can without other factors like stability and technique demands taken away from it. But if you love fucking horse-cocking heavy ass weights with free weight exercises, then just do that. No one will fucking judge you or care about what you do. And also know that you don't have to just stick to one style. Do a bit of everything and max out every single weight stack, barbell or dumbbell in your fucking gym. If you do that, you will get big. I promise you.